Welcome back to the Gory Hole, your favorite festering rabbit hole leading you straight to the most macabre and disturbing corners cinema has to offer. Today on episode 4, lace up your hiking boots as we go on a scenic hike into the mouth of hillbilly hell with Johnathan Liebermans' 1981 slasher Just Before Dawn. After, we'll pull up a seat to a Thanksgiving dinner unlike you've ever been a part of, unless of course your average Thanksgivings consisted of a crazed murderer, dismemberment, and framing your twin brother for murder. In the 1987 Thanksgiving slasher Blood Rage, directed by Johnathan Grissmers. Finally, we top it off with a trip to the decaying inner city streets of Brooklyn in the 1987 black comedy body horror feature Street Trash, directed by J. Michael Murrah. Join us as we follow a sinister bottle of alcohol with a truly deadly bite, wreak havoc on all who consume it. You've heard of 100-proof alcohol before. Well, this bottle of Viper is the highest proof of all. Death proof. All that and a little bit more today on the Gory Hole. Let's get started. All right, y'all. It is episode 4. We're here. I know last week I had the beard shaved, but I had paint on, so this is like the first time. But it grows back pretty quickly, so luckily y'all didn't have to see Babyface Zach, because it's not my favorite. I'm not trying to like talk down on myself here, but Babyface Zach ain't it for me, at least. Tried something a little different this episode. I wanted to write a little bit of a script to talk about the movies, and then at the end of the script, I'll kind of go on like some freeform rants. I feel like this is going to help me get some of the facts and, interesting little tidbits of the movies out so I don't forget them, and then I can kind of just go in and talk about what I thought of the movies themselves. So if you notice a lack of eye contact this episode, it's because I'm reading. It's right under here. We're going to figure it out. Maybe I'll invest in a teleprompter. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But thanks for being here. And yeah, let's get to it, guys. I watched some really, really good movies this past week. I had never seen a single one of these movies, and I think this is the first episode that has movies that's fully consisted of movies that I have not seen. But yeah, let's dive in. The first film of the episode is Just Before Dawn. Now, the basic plot here follows a group of 5 hikers traveling across a mountainous Oregon setting to visit a property inherited by Warren, one of our lead characters. As the hikers make their way deeper into the secluded woods, it becomes clear that they are not alone on this mountain. As members go missing and tension rises, can any of these doomed hikers make it out alive? Written and directed by Jeff Lieberman, Jeff actually wrote... that's so funny. It's not Jeff, guys. It's John. So, we're going to start that again. Written and directed by John Lieberman, John actually rewrote an original script from a group of writers, Mark Arowitz and Jonas Middleton. The original script was heavily inspired by the 1972 film Deliverance, which is pretty cool. Love that movie. It was also originally set in Tennessee, not Oregon, and it had a lot of religious themes apparently woven through the original script that are not present in this one. While that sounds cool, I think this movie is perfect. I was really, really big fan of this one. What does make the cut, though? Plenty of gruesome deaths and a truly unhinged killer with some creepy design. It's kind of interesting. As he's going throughout the movie, he's kind of like killing characters and then like taking bits of their wardrobe and putting them on. So the more people he kills, the more his wardrobe is added to, which I thought was really, really cool. It's like he looks different after each kill, which I thought was fun. The music is also fantastic. I'll play a little bit of the score here after I finish the review. But it's fucking bone-chilling. Adds a great layer of fear to like an already tense film. The score was created by none other than Brad Fiedel, who, if you like film scores, you might recognize that name because he also did Terminator and the original Fright Night. So he's got some really good movies under his belt there. One thing I noticed about this movie is it's a much more patient slasher than most. I feel like your like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street vehicles tend to pick off the cannon fodder a little bit faster. Which, I'm not necessarily mad at. That is what we're here for. But this film definitely takes its time. And I think that's because there's only like 5 characters. It's in a more secluded setting. So you got to take your time. Otherwise, you kill all 5 characters and then you're just like, well, that was only 30 minutes. So I think it's probably by necessity that it's a more patient slasher. It does a really good job of just showing like a lurking presence of doom and death, because you get a lot of like really good shots of the people just kind of hiking through the woods in the beginning. But like you'll see the guy in the background that's stalking them. And, it kind of adds that layer like, okay, like he's out there. But you also get in between that, lots of time of them setting up their camp and, fucking around with each other, having laughs, going swimming, drinking beer, dancing to music. And I feel like you get a lot more of that than your average slasher. So by the time the killing starts to actually happen, you've spent a fair amount of time with these guys and girls. So I think the deaths hit a little harder because of that. I'm like, no, not that guy. He was a photographer. He had plans, damn it. But yeah, the patience gives way to a lot of really nice character growth because you just spend more time with them. Warren, our lead, played by Greg Henry, which, side note, Greg Henry, great actor. If you look him up, you might recognize his face. I always think of him from that movie Payback with Mel Gibson, which is a really good, just kind of like revenge action noir kind of thriller. And he's also really good in the Brian De Palma film Body Double, which we're definitely going to talk about on this podcast at one point. We're going to do a whole Brian De Palma series probably. But yeah, Greg Henry, he's super young in this. So I always like just seeing actors I know pop up in like early horror films, so shout out to Greg Henry, getting his start with horror. But yeah, Greg plays Warren. He's a trained climber with along with his girlfriend Constance. Constance and Warren seem to struggle with their intimacy as the film moves forward. You notice, especially compared to the other 2 hikers, Megan and Johnathan. Megan and Johnathan are their friends, and they're, making out, borderline hooking up for like the whole movie. And you kind of see like Warren and Constance trying to get the mood right, but it always keeps slipping away from them. And it almost makes it look like Warren is like jealous of of Johnathan and Megan, like always, hooking up. So that's kind of like an aspect. Filling out the group is also Jonathan's brother, Daniel, who is the photographer of the group. But yeah, the violent nature of this film actually caused Universal Pictures to back out of its distribution, like pretty last minute. So it was later released by a smaller independent company named Picture Media. The film was also given an X rating for its release in the UK and was released under the title Survivance in France to capitalize off the success of the film Deliverance. They wanted to make it seem like they were somehow related. Upon release, the film's pretty 50-50. Some call it a boring average slasher with little suspense. Others applaud its excessively bleak tone and gorgeous mountain setting. I think I fall into that camp. I think this movie would be a great double feature with a film, say, like In a Violent Nature that came out this past year. Because you get some great, just like extended sequences of hiking that really just, to some people it might just be boring filler, but for me, those sequences of them just getting deeper and deeper into the mountain and then them flashing the guy stalking them, for me, I'm like, okay, like they're getting more and more fucked with each step that they're taking, because as they continue to take these steps and go deeper and deeper into these woods, they're more secluded. So by the time the guy actually starts, picking them off, they're like way out here in this mountain. And yeah, so I think the hiking scenes do a good job at hammering down like how secluded and how stranded they are once the killer actually begins to strike. Warren is basically leading these 5 hikers through the mountain because he has property on the mountain that he was given in like a will. He's got a deed with him. One thing I think is funny in this movie, they get like way more warnings about this mountain being a bad neighborhood than most of your characters do in these kind of slasher films. Friday the 13th, right? Drunk guy comes out of the shop and he's like, don't go to Crystal Lake, you're all doomed, right? Like, they kind of get like one little warning. The one character gets the warning and separate from the other characters, and the warning in the little like diner that they shouldn't go. These guys, when they pull up to the mountain entrance, there is like a mountain ranger. He goes out to their car and he's like, hey, don't go up that mountain. And they're like, nah, come on. Like, we own property up there. We're just going to look after it. And the guy's like, I wouldn't go up there. It's dangerous up there. People get lost all the time. They decide they're going to go up anyway. And the ranger hits them with like a chilling line where he's like, well, you guys just tell me where you're going so I'll know where to look for the bodies. And then they're like, we're going to Silver Lake. And then they just drive off, right? Now, the film opens with a kill of this drunk guy and his cousin, fucking around in this like old rundown church on the mountain. And one guy's, trying to get his car started. The other guy's walking around in the church, the car is sitting outside of. And guy's stabbed to death. And then the drunk guy trying to get the car started looks over, he hears the scream, and then he sees a guy covered in blood walking out wearing the hat of his cousin. So he runs off, and we're reintroduced to him as the hikers get a little bit further up the mountain. They almost run him over. He like kind of jumps out of a bush out of nowhere, and he's like, there's demons in the hills. They killed my cousin. Like, don't go up there. And they kind of just write him off as just a drunk. So they they get two pretty big warnings, like, hey, turn the fuck around, and they don't. So I'm not trying to say they deserve it, but I mean, the first one, the guy just said people get lost, and then two of the people in the group are like experienced climbers with Warren and Constance. So I kind of understand them maybe like being like, nah, but we're not your average hikers, we'll be fine. But the second guy straight up comes out and is like, this dude over here killed my cousin. He's still out there. Like, don't go in the woods. But they just kind of write him off anyway because he's drunk. That might be, and they also like just leave him. They're like, here's a sandwich. The ranger's a little bit down that ways. Bye. And so they just leave him like on the path. You get a great shot, though, as they drive off. You see the killer that the guy was warning them about. He jumps onto the back of their camper. And the drunk guy just watches them drive away, and he sees the guy hanging on the back of the camper, and he just starts laughing. He's like, well, I tried. And he did. After that sequence, you get a lot of really, like I said, good sequences of them, parking their RV and, getting their camping gear out. But you'll see glimpses of the dude, like, hanging on to, like, the camper looking in the window. Very, very frightening stuff. He just looks like a crazed fucking hillbilly, just like, and he's looking at them like they're food. So, super, super good stuff. There is also a sequence in this film where Constance is hanging back at camp with Megan and Daniel, while Johnathan and Warren go back to the camper to get some more stuff. They play a prank on Constance when they get back, though, and like make her think that someone's out there watching them, and then they like jump out and scare her. But they wait a while to jump out and scare her. So she kind of goes through this moment where she's like, hey, who's out there? And she's supposed to be like the trained kind of survivalist, but she kind of like cowers in fear, which makes Megan have to like pull out a knife and like be like, be the more aggressive one. And this really upsets her after, it's revealed to be a prank. She's mad at Warren like a lot for scaring her, but she also has this moment where she says like, it's not only that like I'm mad at you, it's the fact that that's a part of, my training. Like I should have been the one to stand up and, make sure everyone was safe, and all I could do was stand there frozen. So she's kind of mad at herself that she didn't do anything to help save her friends. And that's a really good theme because as the killings start to happen, fast forward to the end, she actually is the final girl who steps up and is able to kill the killer. Now, I guess, we're going into spoilers here with what I just said, and as we move forward, sorry about that, by the way, I'm going to get better at announcing spoiler warnings, but I would just say on a little tangent, I highly recommend trying to watch the movies if you care about spoilers before you listen to my episodes, because I just go into all of it. So I'm kind of going to be talking about these movies, assuming the people listening either A, don't give a fuck if I spoil them, or B, they've seen them and they kind of want to hear my thoughts. So at the end of it, I guess, skipping over something, throughout the movie, you see this other family that's kind of living on the mountain. They pop up. It's kind of like a crazy old dad with a shotgun who's very just like, get off my lawn type. And he's got 2 daughters, one of which is very clearly interested in sex because she keeps spying on Johnathan and Megan while they try to hook up. You don't really think anything of this family for a good bit, but then it is later revealed that the killer in the woods is related, like that's their brother. It is also revealed throughout the whole movie, you see like one killer, but it's revealed at the end of the movie that it's actually 2 killers that just look very similar. They're like twin brothers of this kind of redneck family living on the hill. Which is kind of funny because I guess there's a twin theme this week, because when we talk about Blood Rage, like they're twins too. But yeah, so you've got 2 killers, another 2 killer twist. As I go into a lot of these movies that I've seen, I remember I saw Scream before a lot of these classic movies, and I remember thinking the 2 killer twist was super unique. But as I watch more horror films, I'm realizing that this is a common trope, actually. At the very least, it's happened more than 4 or 5 times in some of these movies I've watched. So it wasn't very original by the time Scream rolled around, is what I'm starting to realize. But yeah, so as the movie continues to go, like I think the first guy that we have die is Johnathan. There's this really, really tricky kind of like rope bridge that he has to traverse. Well, that really all of them have to traverse to get to where they're going. And that's kind of to touch on what I said earlier about the extended sequences of hiking kind of showcasing how fucked they're getting the more they walk. This bridge, it's not like a normal bridge. It's one rope going from point to point, right? And then there are 2 ropes going from point to point that you hold on to. So you're kind of just tight roping with handles. And then you've got Warren, he goes first, and then everyone else goes. But then like Johnathan almost falls the first time, which I guess is foreshadowing, because when he is going across the bridge the next time, he's actually chasing this horny dude. That's what gets him. He's chasing after the daughter of the redneck family in the mountains, because she kind of is like, oh, I'm interested in sex, and then she runs off and he's like chasing her, and then he chases her around this corner. She disappears, and then he thinks she goes across the rope bridge. So as he's going on the rope bridge, that's when he runs into the killer. The killer cuts the rope bridge as he's on it, and he kind of just falls. He climbs back up, and I guess this was the first hint that there were 2 killers, because he climbs back up the rope on the other side of the ridge, and then when he gets up there, the killer is there, and you're like, how the fuck did that guy get there? Surprise, 2 killers. That's how. It was a different guy. And he kicks him back off the mountain. You don't really see him die because he kind of just falls into the water, but his body is later discovered by Constance and Warren, so he's the first person to get it. You've got Megan and Daniel going off, to take pictures. They find like a graveyard in that church from the opening scene, and she wants to, like a lot of girls, she wants to take pictures on graves and stuff like that, because that's fun. While they're taking pictures, the 2 killers descend upon them. There's a kind of funny, kind of reminds me of like Velma from Scooby-Doo, but a lot bloodier, because there's a sequence where Daniel left his glasses and he can't find them. And so, like I said, the killer will put on pieces of their victim's clothing. So this killer is thrown on a piece of Johnathan's clothing, and Megan and Daniel kind of hear someone, and they're like, oh, it's Johnathan playing a prank on us. And then so she like pulls Daniel in and pretends to like make out with him, and she's like, this will get him to come out and he'll be super mad because he'll think we're hooking up. And then as the killer is getting close to them, Daniel can't really see that it's the killer. He can only see the silhouette, and he sees clothing that he recognizes. And he's just like, oh yeah, he's coming. And then like the killer gets close enough and he realizes way too late that it's not his brother. And then he gets stabbed in the chest with a machete. And then Megan, she has another kind of like off-screen death, but it's again like horror that you don't see that's really effective, because she's kind of cowering in the corner of this church. And she's like hiding from one killer, and this is when you officially realize there's two killers, because while she's hiding from one killer, you just see a door open behind her and another killer walk in. So you're like, oh fuck, like she's looking at that guy, but she doesn't even see the killer behind her. And then that is when she kind of just screams, and the two killers kind of just descend upon her, and then yeah, R.I.P. she dead. The problem here, though, is that they don't realize until it's too late that Johnathan, the first victim, had the keys to their van. So they kind of just run away from his body, Warren and Constance. But then, they have to go back and look for his body because they're like, oh, fuck, he had the keys. They get the keys, but then a chase kind of ensues. Luckily, the ranger from the beginning of the movie, he's kind of their saving grace. He shows up and he shoots one of the killers dead. And then that's when, like, us as the viewer, we know there's another killer out there, but the characters haven't really hammered down that fact yet. So they're packing up the camp, getting ready to leave. This is a sequence where I'm just like, I would be going straight back to the van and leaving. They're like, oh, we got to get our tent and all our stuff. And I don't know, I guess I understand maybe grabbing some water since it's a little bit of a hike back, but I'd be like, fuck the tent, leave it out here. You technically own the place anyway, so you could come back. But I would not be sticking around to pack up my tent. But while they're packing up their stuff, the second killer appears. Warren and Constance have kind of like a fight with him. And that's when Warren is very badly wounded, and then Constance kind of has to step up, so to speak. So you get some kind of like full circle character development. She was too scared before, and she kind of has a sequence here where she's just kind of frozen watching Warren fight the guy. But then after Warren's down, she hits fight or flight. She chooses fight, and she jumps on top of the guy, knocks him down, and then she takes her fucking arm and shoves it into his mouth. And this is a great effect because you just see her arm just get shoved down his throat, and she kind of just keeps it there until the guy gargles to death. You know, lack of oxygen and also having a fist in your throat probably does some shit in your neck region that doesn't feel too good. So I don't know if it was suffocation or if she like, you know, caused him to bleed out from having her fucking full-ass forearm completely down his fucking throat. But in any case, he's dead. And yeah, so that's kind of the end of the movie. I was a really big fan of this one. I thought that the extended hiking sequences really did a good job at giving you time to spend with the characters. And I also thought that there was some great background stuff happening, showing the character kind of like slowly stalking them. It kind of reminded me like the first Halloween in that, right? Yeah, I guess I could see the argument that it's kind of boring, but I kind of appreciated the patience that it took. So I don't know. I say check it out. Yeah, I think it's really good. And then, yeah, the music, guys. So we have... Yeah, that whistle. Let's see if I can get this closer. So that's kind of the gist there. And yeah, that was just a sinister whistle that's kind of just following them for like the whole movie. So I thought that was really well done. But yeah, Just Before Dawn, check it out. It's definitely, a nice underrated kind of campy slasher vibe. So definitely give it a go if you're feeling a good slasher. Next up, we're going to talk about Blood Rage. So let's get it going. All right, y'all, here we are. Let's talk about Blood Rage. I would like to say I'm disappointed in a lot of my friends that say they're like horror historians, because I feel like I loudly complain every year to a lot of people that there's not enough Thanksgiving horror. And this movie from 1987 is just out there. It's been around longer than I could have been watching this movie every day of my life. It's older than me, and it's so good. So how did I miss it? I'm just glad I got to watch it for the first time. So, that's always a nice experience. But yeah, let's get into it, y'all. Gather around the dinner table as we say grace for this wonderfully demented and underrated Thanksgiving slasher. Be sure to go for seconds, just be careful. The red stuff ain't cranberry sauce. Blood Rage is a Thanksgiving slasher directed by Johnathan Grissmers, released in 1987. The film stars Louise Lasser, best known for her starring role in the soap opera satire Marty Hartman, and Mark Soper, best known for his role as Joseph in the television series Knots Landing. It also might be Soper. It's Soper. I bet I butcher pronunciations all the time, so feel free to just kind of shoot me a message and be like, hey, you suck, it's pronounced this way. I'm totally open to it. But yeah, the basic plot follows identical twins, Todd and Terry, and their mother, Maddie. One night while the two young brothers lay asleep in the back of a pickup truck at a drive-in movie theater, the mother begins to make out with her date. When the two brothers wake up and see their mother in the act, they sneak away from the car. Terry finds a hatchet, and while Todd watches, Terry murders a man in cold blood as he is having sex in the back of a car. Terry immediately hands the hatchet to Todd and wipes blood on Todd's face, ultimately framing him for the murder. The film then jumps 10 years to find Terry living a free and happy life with a girlfriend, while Todd is held at a mental institution for the criminally insane. The mother is also found a new soon-to-be husband during this time jump. While gathered at the dinner table for Thanksgiving dinner, the mother's given a call that Todd has escaped and is likely headed to their home. The film follows Terry as he goes on a truly gruesome killing spree, all the while Todd tries to prove his innocence and keep himself from being framed again for Terry's violent acts. The film is full of campy fun with a side of gravy, from the blood-drenched practical effects to the over-the-top performances from leads Louise Lasser and Mark Soper, who, by the way, is playing both the Terry and Todd characters. The film is a true underrated cult classic. I'd always grown up wishing more Thanksgiving horror existed, and I'm truly ecstatic to have a new yearly watch for the holiday season. The film was initially released theatrically under the name Nightmare at Shadow Woods in 1987. However, this was a censored cut that eliminated most of the top-notch gore effects present in the later home release with the name Blood Rage. Though the film, during the title sequence, refers to the film by the name of Slasher. So this film's got 3 names. The home video cut is the one to watch, as like I said before, this has some very fun kills. You get beheadings, face splittings, arms being hacked off, and much more. So yeah, Blood Rage is a lot of fun. I feel like the campy performances from the mom and the Mark Soper, who's playing both the twin characters, is really good. Terry, the one that's the actual murderer but framed Todd, his kind of character plays things like he walks this line from like just like, I don't want to say bad acting, but like his delivery is just, your classic B-grade horror movie. But then like when he starts to go insane, he has this like crazed look in his eyes and his delivery stays the same. So it kind of makes it like super darkly comedic in a way. The mom, played by Louise Lasser, is fucking phenomenal. She is just the whole time just like getting drunk and just a fucking violent mess, which you totally understand. Her son is going around killing people, and the one that she thinks is the murderer is actively trying to convince her that he's not the murderer. And so she doesn't know what to think. Her soon-to-be husband, she don't get him, all right? Terry kills him. He cuts his hand off. Blood is squirting out as he's holding it, and then he drives a machete like right down his head. Later, Louise will find the body, and when she pushes it over, his head splits open and his brain is visible and blood is pouring out. And yeah, I bet that is one of the scenes that they cut from this from the original theatrical release. But yeah, there's as Todd makes his way to the compound, that's when the killings kind of start. You kind of see Terry piece together in his brain that Todd coming back is another opening for him to kill again, because he can kill all these people, and then once Todd shows up, he can knock him out. Cops get there, and he's like, yeah, I caught him. He'd already killed all these people, though. So he realizes this is another opportunity to go on another killing spree. So yeah, you've got basically just Terry killing people, but then also there's this group of friends that he has amongst his girlfriend, these two other guys, and another girl that's home from college, and they're all kind of like hanging out, and they're like, oh, we heard your brother might show up, and all the while he is the actual killer, and he's like basically like, my brother's crazy, if you see him, stay away from him, and then all the while he's like getting these people to go into like, these secluded areas, and he's just picking them off one by one. As the film kind of moves on, you are introduced more and more to the kind of the psychiatrist that was working with Todd, and she is actually convinced that Todd was telling the truth when she was talking to him in their sessions, that Todd is innocent. So she shows up to kind of like look for Terry, or not look for Terry, to look for Todd, but also to kind of like talk to the mom and be like, I think we need to focus on Terry. Like, some of the things Todd is telling me make me think that he is not the killer. And Louise sorry, the mom, Louise Lasser's character is not having it. She's like, no, my son's not a killer, or at least not this one. Like, I won't hear it. And, as the psychiatrist tends to pester her more and more, she just leans more into, liquor. There's a really great sequence where she's just like sitting on the floor with the fridge open, and she's just eating Thanksgiving leftovers with a bottle of wine next to her, but she's like eating them with her hands. So she's got a handful of green beans and is just stuffing them in her mouth and then tipping the wine bottle over her head, getting absolutely hammered. And it's cut in between like a kill scene, so it's just like Terry killing people, cut, she's eating Thanksgiving leftovers. So that one was a lot of fun. Had a really good time with that one. But yeah, I thought it was, I'm not trying to nitpick these horror movies, but when the psychiatrist shows up and she's got another kind of like orderly that worked at the hospital with her, I'm like, so you're showing up to look for Todd. Why has no one called the police? Like, the police do eventually show up, but it is far too late. And I feel like that is merely to serve the plot, because if the psychiatrist had brought the police, the movie probably would have ended as soon as she got there, because she clearly needed help, okay? Because the first thing she does right when she gets there is she's like, all right, she tells the orderly, we're going to split up. You go that way, I'll go this way, and we'll look for him. And then naturally, Terry, first he kills the psychiatrist. He cuts her in half. You get a really good sequence of her being cut in half, and then like her body separated, and, the top half of her just kind of moving around and screaming. And it's, super campy fun. And then, the orderly is soon killed, and then you're like, well, there goes all the help. Todd finds the psychiatrist's body, and he has a big moment, because he's like, fuck, that was the only person that believed me, so I'm kind of fucked now. And then you've got this sequence, as, the movie moves on, more bodies tend to pile up. There's a really good beheading sequence where Terry goes over to a neighbor's house who's having a date night, and the woman goes into the bedroom, as she says, to slip into something more comfortable. They about to fuck, and while she's in there changing, she hears a knock at the door, and she tells the date to go get it. When he opens it, it's Terry. You get a hard cut to her walking out of the bedroom, and she's like looking for her date, and then she walks over to the door, because she hears like a banging on it, the front door, and then she looks out the peephole and she's like, I can't remember her date's name. I think it may have been like Mark or Steve or something, but she's like, what are you doing out there? Because she sees him through the peephole, and then when she opens it up, it's just a severed head hanging there. And then that's when Terry just kind of walks up behind her, and yeah, she dead. All right, so Terry is not only wreaking havoc on his family, he is also wreaking havoc on all the neighbors. This all kind of moves to a point where, the neighborhood's got this like indoor pool. That's kind of like the setting for the final sequence. Terry and Todd kind of have a showdown there. At this point, Terry has made himself known to his girlfriend in the film that he is the killer. So she is now not on his side anymore. But the mom comes in while they're kind of having their final moments, and she sees, Terry holding a bloody machete, and she pulls out a gun. And this is kind of a big moment for her because we as the viewer, right, we think that, oh, like she finally realizes that Terry's the killer and she's going to put him down. Like this is what she's been avoiding the whole movie. So she shoots Terry to death. He's kind of on the ground, as he dies. And then, she's hugging Todd. And then that's when she says it. Remember, they're identical twins. She goes, he's finally gone. Todd is gone. And then Todd looks at her and he goes, no, I'm Todd. And she goes, no, you're not. And then that's when it clicks. Like she thought she was killing Todd right there. So she still is refusing to accept that Terry was the murderer. But Todd's literally in front of her like, I'm Todd. And she's like, no, you're not. And the movie kind of just ends after that. So this family's still got some things to work out before next Thanksgiving. If they all want to sit around a table, they've got some therapy they need to go to. Don't we all, right? But yeah, Blood Rage, like I said before, there's not enough Thanksgiving horror out there. And if you are looking for just like a good campy fun slasher, but you feel like you're just watching all of the, the same kind of popular ones over and over and over again, I highly recommend checking this one out. Not a lot of people have seen it. Do not watch the theatrical version. If you do, you'll be like, this movie fucking sucks. You need to look for the home release version, and it's titled Blood Rage, okay? So, if you're watching it, and the title sequence says, Nightmare at something? What is it? Nightmare at Shadow Woods, that's your sign that it's not the right version. If you're watching it and the title sequence shows slasher, you're in for a gore fest, my friend. That is the right version. It was all, you hear a lot of these stories happening to movies like this, and it's always really unfortunate. It's a blessing that this cut that was initially done away with was even able to be released. You've got lots of movies like Event Horizon, a lot of the Friday the 13th movies. I could go on and on. Pretty much any horror franchise that's popular, there's a cut of that movie that was deemed too violent, at least for, American releases, right? That's why I feel like the perfect blend of effects with horror for me come personally from the 80s with Italian horror, because, cinema was protected as an art over in that part of the world, where here we had a lot of kind of statutes that creators had to adhere to. The Christian politics played a huge role in getting a lot of these horror movies pulled from theaters, not shown, cuts being erased. So the Blood Rage is a diamond in the rough there of original cuts being able to eventually be seen. So I'm very happy about that exists. So Thanksgiving's coming up, y'all. I highly recommend checking this one out if you haven't seen it. And then, I guess I just spoiled the whole movie for you if you haven't seen it. But there is a good bit I left out, and I could describe the kills all day to you, but they are ones that need to be seen. They don't make movies like this anymore, though I think they should. The Terrifier franchise is trying to keep those style of effects alive, but I feel like there's a big wave of people who are watching these Terrifier movies, primarily a younger audience that are watching them that are like, this is groundbreaking horror. And I don't want to say they're wrong, because in a way it is groundbreaking with how popular it is. Like horror, being a movie like that getting #1 at the box office, Terrifier 3, is not supposed to happen. And I'm super happy it did. But if you're watching movies like that and you're like, wow, why don't more people make movies like that? I urge you, go back 20, 30 years, you'll find gems like Blood Rage, and you'll be like, this is what Damien Leone grew up on and is bringing back to us. So shout out to him for doing that, and shout out to Blood Rage for making a horror film set on Thanksgiving, because there's not enough of them. Next up, we are going to talk about street trash. This one's an acquired taste, folks. I wouldn't say it's my favorite of the bunch. In fact, if I had to rank these movies, I think like Blood Rage and Just Before Dawn are fighting for first place. I'd have to be in very different moods for either one of those. I feel like if I'm going for a more scary slasher, I would put on Just Before Dawn. If I want to have more fun, I would probably put on Blood Rage. Street trash is straight up black comedy body horror, so it's more of a comedic vehicle. There's not a lot of narrative to it, though. It's kind of just like a day in the life of this kind of Brooklyn inner city setting as this alcohol is just kind of released upon this populace and more people drink it and die. But yeah, let's get into it. So, street trash. We have the black comedy body horror feature. The plot gets rolling as a liquor store owner in the heart of the Brooklyn inner city finds a crate of liquor named Viper stashed in a crawl space within his establishment. Eager to make a quick buck, he quickly puts the liquor for sale for $1. His customer base of broke homeless people begin buying the liquor as is the only option that they can afford. They are unaware, though, that this bottle of booze will melt their bodies from the inside out, and as more and more people begin to drink the horrid concoction, we, the viewers, are treated to some truly gross practical effects as they melt and morph into a sticky bluish sludge. This film, like I said, doesn't have a strong narrative. It doesn't really have a main character per se, as it mainly follows the liquor bottles as it's passed on to many unfortunate souls that happen to take a sip. As the liquor makes its way through Brooklyn, leaving a trail of melted bodies in its wake, we are treated, though, to some truly insane character creations, from an overzealous police officer trying to get to the bottom of all the deaths. He is your perfect campy police officer in a movie. He beats up people to try and get stories from them. He's screaming at everyone. He's trying to take on the mob single-handedly. This dude has it all for campy cop characters. You are also treated to a deranged Vietnam veteran who runs a gang out of a rundown junkyard, and as well a manager at a construction site who engages in necrophilia and attempted rape, among other things. He is the trashiest of the trash in this movie. You also deal with many struggling, unhoused characters trying to survive in the decaying city streets. The film seems to be walking the line from gross-out trauma film-style horror comedy and social commentary on the current state of our cities. While the film portrays many social problems to the extreme, the issues themselves are still relevant today, from the lack of mental health care for our retired veterans and a general rise in unhoused people in urban environments. The film also contains the truly infamous severed private scene, which is unfortunately self-explanatory. It involves a unfortunate hobo who has his dick cut off, and then a group of other hobos play keep away with him with his own dick. And the scene goes on for way too long, and you get lots of slow-mo shots of his severed penis just flying across the screen as they're playing this weird, fucked up version of fucking hot potato with this guy's dick. On that note, yeah, street trash is aptly named, as it hardly has any redeeming characters in the entire film. It's just gross people doing terrible things from start to finish. A great laugh and some solid effects, but not a very strong narrative if that's important to you as a viewer. So yeah, street trash. I would probably say this was my least favorite of the bunch, but it still has its own merits. I feel like this is a movie that you watch at like midnight, 1 a.m., whether it be at your house or it's at, a locally owned theater that's showing old horror movies. This feels like a movie that would be shown in the same time, frame as, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I am a really big fan of the effects in this movie. The severed dick scene, they did great work on that dick. And they had to, because there's lots of shots where it's slow-mo dick severed flying across the screen. And it's like, someone clocked in one day and got to work on that dick. All right, they were painting that dick. They were, adding the blood. They added the little jagged, fucking severed flesh, and they worked hard on it. It was a good-looking dick. Pause. But yeah, and you also, some of the effects when people drink this liquor are just stomach churning. The most popular one that I feel like, even if you haven't seen this movie, you may have seen the clip going around, is you've got this guy who takes a sip of it, and he takes a sip of it, and then the liquor kind of immediately starts to kill them after it hits their lips. It's almost like, how you immediately turn into a zombie in the 28 Days Later franchise. Like, there ain't no, like, oh, they wake up in an hour and start to feel sick. No, this shit happens immediately. So yeah, you've got this guy, he's sitting on a toilet, and he's drinking it, and he starts to melt into the toilet, and you see, like, his calves and his legs start to melt in half as if there's acid eating him from the inside out. He starts to, like, gurgle up bluish green sludge, and he's, like, reaching out of the toilet, and he's falling into it. And then it's one of those old toilets that had, like, the pull chain to flush, and he grabs that handle after he's, like, already, like, in it, and he's basically just a head and an arm at this point, and he pulls it, and he flushes himself down the toilet. Insane stuff, people. Like, again, like, this is a movie that when I watch, I'm like, man, people, maybe they didn't get paid a lot of money, but people got paid. That guy clocked in, he took some makeup, and then he pretended to fall into a toilet and flush himself. That was his day of work that day. Like, I love that. This is why I love movies. Like, who thinks of this shit? You get another great sequence where every time someone drinks it, they all melt in different ways. I guess maybe it's difference in body chemistry, or it's probably just the creators didn't want to be boring and, are just using this liquor as a vehicle to showcase their special effects prowess. But, this other guy drinks it, and he kind of bloats into a balloon and then just explodes, and you just see guts and his head and rib cage and everything just flying all over the place. Truly gruesome stuff, guys. As the kind of plot carries, like I said, there's not a lot of plot, but the film kind of seems to be focused on this one, specific homeless guy who, after he realizes what this Viper liquor does to people, he starts trying to, like, go into areas that he knows he's going to be robbed in by people who he doesn't like, and he'll be like, oh no, don't take my liquor, and then they'll be like, oh, this liquor, and then they'll drink it, and then he'll just, he's basically tricking these people into killing themselves. It's like bait car, right? So he's kind of doing that, and then he kind of eventually has, big enough run-in with that deranged veteran character, and like, that character is just gone balls to the wall gonzo. Like, he's just having PTSD nightmares from Vietnam that are filled with some wild sequences. Again, like, definitely a trigger warning for rape. But definitely a trigger warning for rape on this movie, because it's present in some of his dreams, and there's also that construction site manager who is having sex with dead bodies and trying to rape his employees. So, there's definitely some weird shit going on in this movie. That one homeless guy who's going around tricking people to drink it, the liquor, he kind of, has a final fight with this deranged Vietnam vet, and then that homeless guy's brother is hiding behind a pile of these, like, gas canisters, and he kind of, like, shoots one off at them. The brother ducks, or the homeless guy ducks after his brother shoots it, and the vet is just, his face is hit. He gets hit right in the head with this kind of gas canister, and his body kind of just explodes. And you get a great sequence where, like, his head just flies off, and you get blood splurting, and you just see his head in the background of his body just, like, flopping to the ground. That is street trash, folks. If you're into body horror, it's for me, I would say it's a must watch, even if I'm, maybe not going to watch it, consistently. I wouldn't say it's the best movie I've ever seen, but I mean, it's one of those movies that doesn't have a super strong plot to keep you driven in, but if you're a fan of like how they make these movies and, the effects behind them, that's where this movie shines. So, yeah, I would say Street Trash gets my recommendation if it checks off the boxes for you, but don't go in there expecting some groundbreaking storytelling, because you're not going to get it. Yeah, so I'd say that's the end of our discussion this week. Maybe that was a little bit of a quicker episode than I normally do, but I feel like with the script, maybe I was a little bit more concise and was able to, get what I needed to say, so to speak. I would say the last thing I want to talk about today, I was, as of filming this, it's been 3 days since I got the terrible, terrible news that Tony Todd passed away at the age of 69. I'm later going to do an episode on, the first movies that I remember scaring me. I have a question about it posted on the Facebook page, where feel free to comment, that, because I'm going to use those answers to build out the episode. But on that list, Candyman is, it's definitely near top. That's one of the first movies I remember scaring the fuck out of me. I remember going to a friend's house, going into his bathroom, turning the light off, and doing the whole Candyman in the mirror, and us freaking out, screaming, not being able to sleep. And a lot of what's made that movie so powerful, because a good script is a good script, but at the end of the day, you need a talented individual to bring these characters to life. And Tony Todd made that movie a classic with his performance. In the hands of anyone else, that movie might not be as iconic as it is. And that's not the only thing he has been in. I feel like everything he touches is just absolutely fantastic. His X-Files episode is one of my favorites. I think it's like Dr. Bloodworth or something like that, the coroner in the Final Destination series. He's very, very good in that. He was fantastic as the ex-soldier turned mercenary in The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. Everything Tony Todd touched was absolute gold. And I cannot thank him enough for the things he's done for the genre, for the fear he's instilled into my heart that has later turned into a fascination. My love for horror is directly linked to the just amazing film that is Candyman. So I would say for my viewers, listeners, if you are unfamiliar with Tony Todd, I highly recommend seeking him out. If you are, just haven't seen his movies in a while, now's the perfect time to kind of pop him in and, go down memory lane, so to speak. I would highly recommend the Tom Savini remake of Night of the Living Dead. He plays the main character of Ben in that movie, and that's another just top-notch performance of his that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough. So, with a heavy heart, I say rest easy, Tony Todd. Thank you for everything you did, and you're going to live forever with this legacy that you've created. At the very least, I'm going to keep on talking about you till the day I die, because you are and will forever be one of my favorites. So that's it here at the Gory Hole, guys. Episode 4 in the books. Thanks for listening. I don't know what movies I'm going to talk about next week. I'm going to see Heretic tonight with Hugh Grant, so that's probably going to get talked about. And then I might there's this new French horror film that's streaming on Shudder that I'm getting really, really good feedback from. A lot of my friends are like, you have to see this movie. It's called Mads. So, I'll probably check that one out too and try to build an episode around it. I also might make next week's episode my episode on the worst horror movie of 2024. And then shortly after that, maybe a few weeks after that, I will make my favorite horror movies of 2024. But there's a particular horror movie that came out this year that I feel just needs to be shit on. And, you can call me a hater all you want, but there's some type of filmmaking that I don't like, that I think we cannot support. Otherwise, we're going to get more lazy films just like it. So, to build suspense and keep you on the edge of your seats, I'm not going to reveal that title to you until I do that episode, which will probably be next week, because I don't think I'll spend a whole episode on it. So we'll probably do 2 films, Mads and Heretic, and then I'm probably going to shit on a certain horror film for a fair amount of time. But have a good rest of your week, y'all. Watch something spooky. If it's got Tony Todd in it, you get bonus points. I love y'all, and have a good rest of your week. Stay gory.